Good evening from Shanghai, which is apparently the land of selfie sticks, so I too have purchased one. What do you think? Pretty good? You can see quite a bit? Yeah? Alright, anyways, today's video is on Finnair's A330 business class. I was a little bit bummed that this route that I would be taking wasn't serviced by the A350 anymore, but as you will see, there wasn't too much to be disappointed about. I hope you like this. Today's flight actually starts in London's Heathrow Airport, where the girlfriend and I just got off of British Airways' new A350. I'll provide a link to that video. First, we're going on a short hop aboard a BA A320 over to Helsinki, where we will then take a Finnair A330-300 all the way to Beijing's capital international airport. Our route takes us across Russia, and even more Russia, then Mongolia, and then Inner Mongolia, and then finally into Beijing. The entire trip comes to a total of 5,070 miles. The day starts off with some really shaky camera footage, a consequence of my now out of control caffeine addiction, so if you have any Zofran at home, this will be a great time to take it. In any case, we'll be taking this Airbus A320 over to Helsinki. And here's my seat, 8 Charlie, and no, this is not economy class, this is European business, or specifically what British Airways categorizes as Club Europe. There are 3 differences between this and economy. First, you have the middle seat blocked out, so there's no one sitting next to you. And while this definitely beats having to fight over the armrests or being misfortunate enough to be situated in the middle seat, the legroom is the same as economy's, and it's very average at that. The second difference is that you get a full-service meal plated on real china and silverware, no less. And thirdly, the price. On a standard one-way fare on this route, the lowest business class fares are typically about twice that of the respective economy fare. But keep in mind that a large fraction of people who do travel on European business are on upgrades or connecting itineraries such as ourselves. Apart from the breakfast, the rest of the flight was agonizingly uneventful, so after having read the in-flight magazine in its entirety, I was quite happy to hear that we were beginning our approach into Finland's capital. Helsinki's airport features this atrium located in the middle of the gates area. This space plays host to a ribbon of screens that emulate nature scenes from around the country. It's accompanied by the ambience of the location, and there are interactive projections telling you a little bit about the place and subject. Is it a gimmick? Absolutely. Am I impressed? Oh, most definitely I am. Depending on how you look at it, the airport is arranged into a reverse V shape, or for the most diehard of nerds, a lowercase lambda inside a big lambda. Anyhow, the airport has 2 terminals, but seeing as they are connected, we can regard it as one. Nevertheless, there is a boundary between the Schengen and non-Schengen zones where a checkpoint exists to control passage between the two. The international terminal was recently rebuilt and looks amazing with its high ceilings and large curtain walls. The architecture reminds me a little bit of Shanghai's Pudong International Airport, but with a distinctly Nordic approach to the furnishings and facades. The Finnair lounge is split into 2 sections, the Platinum Wing for One World Emerald passengers and a Business Wing for plebs, such as ourselves. Upon entering, you are greeted with this intricate display of PVC piping. And aptly so, the plebeian section was undergoing some construction. Joking aside, the seating areas were plenty comfortable and was divided into smaller areas for a cozier feel. I think it's meant to reflect the atmosphere of a living room, and if so, it does a good job. Amenities also included a shoe shine machine and a bag storage room. I just realized how hard it is to say the word shoe shine. Shoe shine, shoe shine, shoe shine, shoe shine, shoe shine, shoe shine. The buffet area was flanked by cafe-style seating with a large table in the middle with a selection of cakes, fruits, and salad. There was an extensive self-serve bar with beers, wines, and spirits. In terms of hot food, there was pizza and some soup. And next to that were espresso machines and a tea station. On a separate cart were reading materials and a few bottles of sparkling wine. And finally, the piece de resistance of any lounge, a shower, which simply by virtue of its existence automatically earns this lounge a 10 out of 10 from me. Towels and a shower mat were provided, as well as Finnish lavabo. Of course, there was a hairdryer as well as some other basic amenities. Everything in here was immaculately clean, and this included of course the shower stall. The water pressure was great, and you had your standard selection of shampoo, conditioner, and body wash. And much like a Nordic spa, there was even ambient music. Before we leave the lounge, let me show you the various paraphernalia on display at the entrance. As we followed the signs to our departure gate, it dawned on me that ours was going to be a bus gate. This was somewhat of a bittersweet moment. Bitter because it was bitterly cold and windy outside and we were not dressed for this kind of weather. But also sweet, as in this sweet-ass view of the airplane that will be taking us to Beijing. We boarded via the forward stairway and immediately found our seats, 1A and 1C. These are not the newest seats that you can otherwise find on Finnair's A350s, but nevertheless they were adequately comfortable with the added bonus of having two seats next to each other on the window side. On the port side of the plane, the seats are staggered so that the even number seats have only one so-called throne seat per row. As is tradition, let's do a seat tour. On these bulkhead seats, there was plenty of foot and leg room. In between the footwells was this capacious magazine rack, and underneath that, two cubbies to store your shoes and to find the provided slippers. Here you'll find life vests inside this compartment, and up here is the center console where you'll find the seat controls. You can control the seat back and leg rest individually, and there's a massage option. In the middle here is a small indent where we put our welcome drinks. And over here is the button that you press to bring out the tray table from the middle console. Now this tray table is a little... Yes, pass me, that is the button. Now the tray table is a little stubborn in the fact that you have to pull really hard and lift at the same time in order to bring it out. Once locked in position, you can unfold it to deploy it fully. The tray table is pretty sturdy but not all that big, and putting it away also requires a little bit of girth in order to shove it all the way back into its hatch. And back here next to your shoulder is another small cubbyhole in which we'll find some I/O ports that includes, bizarrely, a Ethernet connection and a universal power outlet. I discovered later on in the flight that underneath this hatch is a remote control for the IFE system. There was not a lot of storage space in this seat, but the center console was large and proved to be a decent bedside table. I couldn't for the life of me fathom as to what the mood lights button did. If it was meant to control the dome lights, well then it didn't work. And over on the other side, although it's quite difficult to do so, the armrest does lower to allow you to leave the seat during meal times and to give you more space when you're sleeping. Next to the IFE screen is a small coat hook, and finally there are adjustable individual air vents. Alright, seat tour over, let's check out the amenities. The slippers were a nice touch given that this is an Asian route. My feet are 45 in European sizes or 12 American and they fit comfortably. The pillow was substantial but not special, and the duvet was comfortable, old school cotton but nonetheless very thick and comfy. And this is the amenity kit co-branded by Marimekko, the Finnish design house who have tried for the last 60 years to bring back the 60s. And here are the contents inside. You'll find a very average eye mask, a dental kit, and some earplugs. And while they do not include socks, you do get a box of personal care products from L:A Bruquette. Specifically, you get a lip balm and some face cream. After takeoff, a hefty hot towel was handed out, followed by a choice of drink from the bar menu. We both ended up with the same red wine, and with that, let's have a closer look at the menus. And yes, menus with an S as in plural, since there was both a food and bar menu. Quite recently, Finnair has stepped up its in-flight service game with a revamped food and beverage program, and even the ability of pre-ordering your meals, which I did. But otherwise, the selection on board was also quite substantial. The same was true for beverages, and Finnair even had a few signature cocktails, all of which featured a Nordic twist. There was no shortage of options in terms of wines, whether they were champagne, whites, reds, or of the fortified variety. In terms of coffee on the A330, they only had the brewed kind, since espresso machines were only available on the newer A350s. A little while later, we were served the shrimp amuse-bouche, which did its job in amusing my bouche. Oh god. Terrible jokes aside, about an hour later, our food had yet to arrive, so I impatiently decided to spend this time checking out the bathroom. This is the forward business class bathroom, and as you can see, it's pretty spotless and remained so for the entirety of the flight. Apart from that, it's pretty standard in size and features. With that said, there is an adjustable air nozzle in here and also hand towels, which is something you don't see that often. And of course, from our old friends at L:(A), hand wash and body lotion. If I can get this turned around, that is. Here we go. This bathroom also included a window and, perhaps less importantly, a toilet. Over on this side is a full-length mirror, and once again here I am looking like an idiot. Overall, the bathroom is quite spacious, and finally up here out of reach of children are 2 coat hooks. After returning to my seat, our food finally arrived, and it did so all at once. This is the reindeer which I had pre-ordered. Canadians call this caribou, and it tastes kinda like venison, just a bit gamier. I also got this unpronounceable starter and some cheese. Meanwhile, the girlfriend opted for the chicken and kale risotto, which was accompanied by the same accompaniments accompanying the person accompanying her's meal. Yeah, that's me. Overall, the food was good, but it did take almost 2 hours to be served. Skipping dessert, let's move on to the in-flight entertainment. In terms of headphones, Finnair does provide these noise-cancelling ones, although they're not the best quality both in terms of comfort and noise cancellation, so beyond testing them out, I didn't use them much. The first thing I noticed is that although the screens don't articulate, they do have a privacy film on so that your neighbor can't see what you're doing. For some reason, this led me to believe that there was adult content on these systems. Sadly, there was not. Navigating the menus was easy, but the touchscreen is based on resistive technology, so you really have to finger it hard to get a response. There wasn't a whole lot of new releases, but there was a fair bit of content available, both in terms of TV shows and movies. After browsing for a bit, I settled on a documentary about Finns and their ubiquitous saunas. A huge selection of Chinese movies and TV shows were also on offer, which makes sense considering that Finnair operates 8 daily flights to cities in China. The route map was as basic as it gets. It played a loop of a few different views. Weirdly enough, this plane did have outboard cameras and you can stream them. This Airbus was also equipped with Wi-Fi on board, with an unlimited whole flight option which came to just under €20. Additionally, passengers traveling in business class had a free 1-hour Wi-Fi pass, and the speeds were pretty slow, but I only checked out when we were flying over Siberia, so don't take my word for it. With 5 hours left in the flight, I decided to get some sleep and thus reclined my seat. The padding was adequate and the seat wide enough to get comfortable. However, the seats next to the aisle, such as the one I was in, don't have much in the way of privacy. At any rate, I was exhausted and before long I was fast asleep. 3 hours of semi-quality sleep later, I found myself listening to a Spanish couple behind me loudly having a conversation regarding which restaurants they wanted to visit in Beijing. I also found 2 bottles of water on our console. And after sitting in my seat for 5 minutes, blanking out like the dimwit that I am, I decided to go for a walk around the cabin. And this is when I discovered a small spread of snacks at the rear of the cabin. You had savory and sweet options, as well as the selection of beverages. Oh yeah, you also got refreshing towels, although they weren't hot. In the end, I didn't end up having anything. Instead, I went back to my seat to watch the sunrise. Now, the YouTube comment section may not always be the best place for this, but sometimes, and just sometimes, you encounter an enlightening comment that completely changes your perspective. And that is why, for breakfast, I went with the Asian option. But to be fair, the only part of this breakfast that was even remotely Asian was the congee that served as the main course. But to be fair to the congee, it was fantastic. The bamboo shoots and preserved radish were full of flavor. I'd definitely take this over the Western breakfast that my girlfriend opted for any day of the week. But I may be biased due to my newfound Asianness. Okay, joking aside, this yogurt was actually really good and I made sure to get a good shot of it so that I could find it later. And as someone who takes their coffee black, I'm qualified to tell you that it's really good. I forgot to mention that they served a smoothie with breakfast and I opted for the berry option. By the time we were finished eating, we had begun our descent into Beijing's capital airport, and so I'll share some of my thoughts on this flight. I was a little bummed that the meal service took almost 3 hours, biting into time I would have otherwise liked to have spent asleep, but I was glad that the lay flat seat wasn't too small or otherwise uncomfortable. We had originally booked this flight expecting it to be serviced by an A350, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like I missed out or was shortchanged. This A330 product is holding its age very well, the seats were good, the IFE was adequate, and the service was otherwise great. The food overall was very memorable too. At the end of the day, Finnair left a great impression on us, and now I'm excited at the prospect of enjoying their service once again on the A350. I hope this film helps you decide whether or not to try Finnair, or at the very least I hope that it was mildly entertaining. Once again, thanks for watching, safe travels, and see you next time.